I think I'm live. Hey guys, once again, welcome back to the goanchesstrio. And this is Anurag, and again, we'll continue the Middlegame series that you have been doing thus far. And thank you for all for joining here. If I can. Well, I'm sure if you have suggestions, you can definitely mention them in the comment section below, and you can also message it. We'd be happy to take if you have any alternative ideas or so. We're here to help you, and we're trying our best. So let's get started. Today we will. Now I think we can hear. You can hear me, right? Okay. So today again we'll be looking at different structures and also like we'll get along to the games. Now this, as you can see, is an isolated pawn structure. Hello, Clinton. Once again, uh, glad to see you in the chat. Thanks for joining in. So first, we'll just take a rough look at different structures which are that we will be looking at. Like most likely today, we will try to cover IQP structures, isolated pawns, basically isolated queen pawn, isolated king pawn. IQP structures, they're called like isolated queen pawn and hanging pawns, and many ideas and positions where how exactly you continue in this positions. We cannot really do all the structures at once, so we'll try to cover as much as is possible today. uh, I'll give you a rough walkthrough as to what kind of structures I'm talking about. So this is one. Let's say you change the pawn, there's a small change, the e6 pawn is moved to c6, but the basis stays the same. There'll be some different plans, some different executions, etc. Oops, sorry. There'll be some different executions, etc. in this kind of positions. Now, no, I don't want to save it. This is from the black side. That again, black has an isolated pawn, nothing to be confused about. Let me flip it. It's just the same, but it's the other way around. And okay, why is it again and again asking me to save it? Okay, you can see here, these are like, on the verge of becoming hanging pawns. Like there's a small change in positions. When you play isolated pawn structures, you can like, let's say, if I play some move like this, and you can see that these pawns that we had discussed earlier yesterday also hanging pawns on the board. How do you play in these positions? What are the possible plans? What are the possible ideas where you can focus? This is what we'll try to cover today. Let's take a rough look at some other things. Like here, okay, this is the same position. Let's move along. Here we have, like, if you're aware of it, this is called the Carlsbad structure. I'll show it to you from this side, and I'll show it to you from this side also. This is the Carlsbad structure that we have on the board. What are the possible ideas and plans? For example, ignore the pieces and ignore that there is no king on the board, but let's just see. Let's say white has a few plans in this position. Now, let's say we play b3. What are the things that black can do? If you play c5, now let's picture that there will be a piece here on the board. You can either take an isolated pawn, you can allow your opponent to just capture on d4 and play a symmetrical structure. What are the different plans if you take and play? What if black does b6 and plays c5? Should you capture? Do you play against the hanging pawns, etc.? Is what we'll try to cover through different games. And once again, welcome everybody in the chat. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Now here we have the Penov structure. It's come from the Caro-Kann opening, but this is not the main thing. The point is that we can get some relative structures from this openings also. For example, let's say black plays c5, and let's just assume that white plays something. You have an IQP structure. So even from different openings, if you play Caro-Kann or you play Sicilian Najdorf, you play Kingston in defense, it is a good idea to get an overview of different structures possible. But the reason is that what if things transpose into this position? Like here, it's not necessary that this is always seen through this opening, but there is a good chance that it could transpose, like c5. Now you could take dc5. Let's say black plays b6, c5. Sometimes he plays e5, and sometimes you have a pinned rook here on d1. Let's say, then you cannot really do anything. You have to allow that isolated pawn to come on the board. Now we had seen the first position on the board, so we are trying to establish what to do in this kind of positions today in today's live stream. So any questions, guys, as we go along? You all can definitely mention it in the chat. Let's just load the next game and see. Here we have the slab structure. It comes from the slab. And the Caro-Kann structure had a pawn on c3. Here the pawn just moved to e3. But the positions and the openings are almost relative, because if you play c5, once again, the same kind of thing can happen on the board. Same goes for e5. a similar thing can happen. You can get an isolated pawn, you can give an isolated pawn, etc. So that is what we will try to establish. Here we have the Meroxy, but this we'll see later. But there are some relative structures here also. But let's just get going with the games actually. Let's move along to the next one. Now, as you can see in this position, actually, let me just go back a couple of moves. Okay, Rook E1 was played on the board, and you see that we have an isolated pawn. So in isolated pawn, let's say you are the one holding an isolated pawn. What do you do in this situation? What is the main goal for white? What is the main goal for black, etc. That is what we'll try to understand here. If you're black also, you can look at it from black side also. If you're playing this positions, you're facing this kind of openings from black side, that will also help, because you will know what white tries to do, and maybe you can stop it from happening. Or if you're playing white and you get an isolated pawn, you know what are the basic plans and ideas. So one thing, when you have an isolated pawn, try to prevent exchanging of pieces. The more you exchange, the more you head towards the end game, the more difficult it will get to play with this isolated d pawn. The end game is the worst situation for this weak d pawn. It gets more and more exploited. So the main thing when you play with an isolated pawn is to parry black's ideas to take more control, get development going easily, and prevent exchanges if it's possible. Once again, there are good exchanges and bad exchanges also. For example, now here in the game, black played knight b6. Let's say he had played b6. What is one of the major ideas for black in this kind of position? It is to keep control over the d5 square. So what can white do in this position? He can prevent a with like knight b4 and knight d5, let's say with something like a3, or he can go for knight into d5. Now this can be considered like a good exchange, because although exchanging pieces, if black plays queen d5, he immediately runs into some problems. Can anybody highlight me in the chat and tell me what problems does black run into here? Once again, guys, thank you a lot for joining. Are we having anybody in the chat? Bishop c4 is not really possible. Bishop e4. Okay, bishop e4 is what you're saying. 1 minute. Let me just get this. Bishop e4 is possible, yes, because you're able to pin this. And what is the follow-up idea after the queen moves? Let's say I move it back to d6. What is the next thing that you would do after bishop e4, queen d6? Shall I play it out on the board, guys, for you? Let's say bishop e4 and queen d6. What do you think white should do next in this? You can either tell me your ideas, or if you have something even directly, that also is fine. You can let me know something immediately in the position here. Yes, queen c2 is the move, because you're attacking c6 as well as h7, and you're trying to exploit it. This is the main goal in the position, where you either find a tactical resource, you find to utilize your pieces effectively, or there is one more thing that you can do in such positions that white can do. That's why I asked you whether you have ideas. You can let me know. Knight e5 is okay. That's also considered to be a tactical idea. Knight e5 is also a tactical idea. Yes, you're trying to exploit the spin. But there is one more important thing that you should know in IQP positions. Besides, if you're exchanging right exchanges, good exchanges, bad exchanges, and also you can get rid of your weaknesses. So d5 is one more thing that, yeah, Gaurav, that was good. d5 is one more thing that you can do besides the tactic. If you get a chance, you can get rid of your isolated pawn, and the weakness is no longer there. So now you can see that you have a nice position here. Your pieces will be free. You no longer have a weakness to worry about. And now this kind of exchanges are okay. You can also get creative with your tactical resources, maybe bishop d5. Okay, queen d5 by itself is a nice one, because after queen d5, we have a pin here, and the e7 bishop is also under attack. So white captures and goes on to win a free piece here. So that is also worked out. Queen c2 double attack that you all said, that also worked out well. But The ideas are important that you should know. So that's a good exchange, because now when he plays ed5, we have a symmetrical structure, and that could be an improvement. That could help us, right? Because we no longer have d4 to worry about. We can go about normal development, etc. Or maybe most of you all have already seen it, queen c2, like you can give a double attack and win some material too. So that's a good exchange. Similarly, let's say white plays a3 and stops knight b4. You're allowing knight into c3, but this kind of exchange is again maybe sometimes good, sometimes bad, but it could be a good exchange here because you're improving your structure. So allowing that exchange is a good exchange. But let's say you're going to do something like knight e5. Now this would not always be a good exchange. There can be some situations where, let's say, you have some tactical resources on h7. Some people must be already considering something like queen h5 and entering. Yes, there it will be okay, but otherwise this is not a good idea. You should try to utilize your pieces effectively and keep as many as possible on the board. Anyways, now in the game, he avoided that. He played knight f6, and clearly we can see that I just highlighted knight b4, and he wants to improve this knight to d5 and take control of the d5 square. So, what are the possible things that you should look for? If possible, try to get d5. If not possible, try to prevent black from getting control over that d5 square. So, what is the move that you can play as white here? What do you think white did in the game? Hello, Frips. Good to see you. What does white do here? I just highlighted the immediate threat, let's say, to you. What do you think white should do? Yes, a3, simple. Like just stop knight b4 altogether, and that is a good thing because you're preventing preventing black, sorry, from taking control of that d5 square. So somewhere later down the road, you could have this nice d5 move available as long as it's not overprotected. You cannot just do d5 right away, but you can definitely prepare and look forward to it. Now he played b6, and this is where again, now if you don't know what to do, you should not simply go and exchange pieces. There's a common mistake, like some people see, like, a tactical resource here. Again, it's a good idea, it's not a bad idea at all. The idea is that I think knight into e4, and just like we had focused a moment or two earlier, you have a pin here, you have some resources here, and queen c2, and you have a double attack winning some material. But what if he doesn't take? If it doesn't take and you're not getting anything after this, then basically this move is just going to help black here after this, because you're just attacking d4. You no longer have the same double attack, and that exchange is not really useful for us. So look for something else. What do you think we would do in this position? Either go for development, or anybody has any ideas in the chat? Queen c2 here. No, queen c2 is good, Shreyash. Like you should also try to, think of the little bit of like little bit ahead. Let's say you play a queen to c2, bishop b7. At the moment, everything is protected. Do you have a tactical resource? If not, you should be looking forward to development. And once look you develop, let's say you play bishop g5 h6, and I take care of this. Basically, bishop f6 and bishop h7 is hanging. So let's assume I take care of this. You move the bishop, and I come with rook c8. Do you really want to put the queen on bc2 if that rook is going to, that it's going to come on c8? Is that a good idea? Not really. So maybe that you can think of a little bit ahead, and maybe you can choose an alternative square. Maybe this is a much better square. This threat is just one move. If your opponent blunders, you get it. Otherwise, you don't get anything. Queen e2, and you can go with bishop g5. The same idea, but at least you don't come under the x-ray somewhere later down the road. And one more thing, I think somebody in the chat mentioned bishop c to queen d3 is a much better way to attack that h7 pawn, because the queen also stays closer to the d4 pawn. It does defend there. Eyes on h7, and opens up some tactical resources. Opens up some tactical resources here. Let's say I play queen c7. What do you think you can look for here? Well, we are just looking at IQP structures, hanging pawns, and some openings which come from there. We'll try to cover as much as possible in those kind of structures and try to get ideas acquainted. IQP is one of the most common ones in many different openings. Karlsbad structure, Slav, French also you see this. So we're trying to focus on that at the moment, Prathamesh. So Queen C7, can anybody tell me what they would do in this position? Any ideas that come into their mind immediately here? Ng5. Okay. See, NG5 is directly attacking H7. Agree with that, but always see if you can do it in a better way. Like, you can find out always a better way if possible. NE4 is not the better way. NE4 is directly attacking there, but okay, like let's say NE4 may also really work here, but what about anything else? Like, seems interesting. You can go for development instead, right? To do the same thing without going for exchanges. Any4 definitely looks good, but you can also go for development instead. Bishop g5 seems like a natural way to eradicate this defender and indirectly also threaten h7. And this is so strong that black doesn't really have a good way to defend it other than g6. And he has created a weakness on the board. You can start targeting it. You can either exploit this here. You can also, one more thing you can do in such positions here itself is look for d5. Yes, Suresh, you're right. D5 is also an indirect way to try to exploit it. Again, you should always verify whether it's really working, if there's any problem or so. But this is a possibility that should be at the back of your mind. Yesterday, we had seen some tactical resources like this exploiting the h7 point. This is a good idea. But then comes the point that whether black has something. So he has rook f d8 and he can create problems, but it should be at the back of your mind to think of something like d5. And people who consider knight g5, like unless at g6 and you're again able to finish your opponent, I cannot see it. If you can, that's great. I cannot see how I can finish my opponent directly with some mating attack here. If not, then I would rather prefer to develop my piece. Like it doesn't get in the way, it's not an unnecessary move, and it still forces black to weaken his position. Very simple. Now let's say he plays something like h6 here to stop bishop g5. He realizes bishop g5 and knight g5, knight e4, etc. are probable ideas he plays. He plays h6 here. What is the move that we can play in this position? Definitely, Ashank, you're most welcome. You can definitely answer your moves. We really, really glad to take your answers. So after h6, any plan like it comes to mind. Try to just go about simple. You know the possible ideas, possible plans in such positions. What is good, what is bad. d5 is one thing you look for. If not, don't try to exchange too many pieces, etc. Now, some people have already said knight e4. Yes, knight e4 is one thing possible. Bishop h6. Okay, we are already getting into crazy territory here. Bishop into h6 is. I don't think it is working. And I don't know if it is really working, but can see you have some ideas. But bishop h6 is something that, see, that is it's not going to be an idea which is there in each and every position, but I don't think it is really working. Like, what is the idea? Bishop h6, and if I play g h6, I don't know if it is really working. Also, I can see you have some interesting sacrifice, but the simple plan. Let's say he has played h6. Once he plays h6, yesterday I had highlighted one more thing. Unnecessarily should not push h6 or so if possible. If, like sometimes even the move g6 is better. But let's see how we can exploit this. Knight e4 is a decent choice now, because there's a point to it. Knight into e4, queen into e4. This time you don't have the move bishop g5, and after queen into e4, you can already see that he's struggling to play g6 because you have bishop h6 falling here. That's a much simpler way. Now, if you have a simple way to continue in the game, right? One more important thing: don't unnecessarily go and sacrifice your piece and try to finish your opponent. I understand everybody likes to play some exciting chess on the board, but that is not always going to work. And there is a good chance that you could make a blunder, go wrong, and end up losing that game. So, if possible, you can avoid that. If there is a simpler way, why not choose that simple one? But one thing is, like, don't rush. Verify your idea. Like, I've seen many people, like, they will think, okay, d5 is there, right? I'll go for d5, I'll sacrifice 27, 95. Forgetting that black can also so simply play 97 and everything is defended here. So you're just sacrificed for absolutely nothing. But we'll be looking at examples where things like d5 will also be coming on the board. You got an idea now, a basis of how to play in such positions. I'll show you what happened in the game. The best move for black in this position, just like I showed you earlier, g6 is the best way. It looks very odd and very bad, but it's the much better way because you know the possible ideas that white has. Like h6 knight e4 is not going to work out very well. So g6 is the best move to defend this position, and then black can try to continue. Black played rook c8, and here white went with bishop g5. You're missing out on something very nice here, but white went with bishop g5. It's a simple way to go about it. Black played g6, white went with rook a d1, and the position went on. Black went knight d5, bishop h6, rook e8. We'll be seeing such things here. Like white did not immediately go and capture or immediately try to improve, just slowly played out his positions, trying to initiate more and more weaknesses. He went on to win definitely, but let's just go a moment or two back. Now, sometimes besides some positional plays and how to place your pieces, you have to also be aware of which tactical resources are there. Can anybody tell me anything in this position they could look at? What else could white do in this position after rook c8? Yes, bishop h6 is also good. That is definitely like g6, but still g6 is the better way because let's say bishop g5. We'll first try to see if anybody can find any tactical resource right here in this position. Anything? This is slightly difficult and I'll show it to you, but a very nice resource to keep it at the back of your mind. d5 is the move here, which immediately wins. Into d5, and this is met with, it's not a very direct tactic, but bishop g5. I think everybody in the chat is, some of you are at least getting it. Bishop g5 is the move, not knight g5, but bishop g5. You're threatening the same thing. Black's only defense is to play with this, and now can anybody tell me which is the best move for white here? The entire point of d5. You did it for a reason, and now it's time to go for that killing move. What is it? What do you think is that killer move, guys? And into d5 is the killer move, apparently, for some people. Okay, that looks like a free piece to me, Ritvik. And into d5 will not really work, Ritvik, but you can go for rook into e7 here, and I think that is the move that you're looking for. Rook into e7 is excellent tactical resource, and this is where IQP, you are most likely looking for tactic, like positions which are open. You're playing IQP for the sole reason that your development happens faster. Okay, in any isolated pawn positions, we'll go back in a moment and see that. Now, queen into e7, knight into d5 is a strong pin which wins the queen, or let's say wins material, and maybe black will even get mated very soon. Knight into e7, you just capture on f6, and that is just too strong with a lot of different ideas. But materially also, we are completely up already. So one thing you have to note is that when you play IQP as white, or you're facing against IQP, you have to realize that whoever has the isolated pawn does have a little bit extra space on the board. So black, your opponent also, black right now is compromising on some space because he has absolutely no piece on the fourth rank, whereas white is already planning to, play bishop g5 and go for more extra development. He has the room to like develop his pieces very efficiently, and that's why black does, like, the main point of the IQP in such this position is that he gets a lot of attack going, and black tries to neutralize it by exchanging a lot of pieces. That's black's main idea. But here, unfortunately, he was just not in time, and the game went in white's favor. So let's just go to the next position now. Yeah. So here we have a slightly different IQP is this, Sandeep. IQP is when you have an isolated queen's pawn. Okay. That's an IQP structure. So we're looking at IQP structures right now. It's called isolated queen's pawn. Okay. One of the most common structures in the game of chess. Again, depending on the opening, but it can come through e4. Just because it means queen pawn, it doesn't only come through e4 through one d4. It can come through e4. It can come through many different openings, and it can come through, like, it can come through Carlsbad. It can come through Nimzo Indian. It can come through many different openings in this the setup on the board. So h4 is not working. Where exactly were you talking about h4? Like, uh, let's just go back and h4 here. See, h4 is one thing. Like, if you have something better, right? Where exactly are you saying h4? Right away h4 here after d5 and everything. No, here I give D. See, if you're playing h4, you don't need to. Like, I'm focused more on the d5 idea here. Clearly, here h4 suddenly out of the blue will not be a good idea, Shyam. Like, you're giving d5. Like, if you play h4 here also, how strong is it is what you have to figure out. Like, h4, h5, it's decent, it's not bad. But again, if you have better, something better, then you can choose the better idea here. h4 is again not planning h5 because I still see knight into h5 coming. But okay, that's also a good way whenever you see g6. We'll see that in later structures, anyways. And coming here now this is again the isolated pawn. Here we have a slight difference though. Instead, like black has the knight on d5 already, and instead of playing knight b4 or so, he has a bishop on f6. There's a slight difference in position. Previous game he had a knight on f6. So this time he sees that white has played bishop e4, maybe with an intention to change the structure with knight to d5. Thus black just consolidates with knight c e7. Um, what do we do in this position here? Now he's consolidated. What do you think? You should think about what Black's ideas could possibly be. How will he go about development? Which exchanges are favorable? Which exchanges are not? Do we capture knight into d5 here? Can we try to initiate more weaknesses, etc.? Is what you need to think of, and then according to that, you can play out your moves. Like you have to develop your pieces also. Do you have a good square for your bishop to go to? If not, is there anything else I can do which can slightly improve? Bishop into d5. Where bishop into d5 here, like in this position, is that a good exchange? Shreyash, I'm asking you like directly, is that a good exchange here? Do you really want to give away your bishop for your knight for the knight here? I mean, which like I understand that the knight is very strongly posted here, but the main point of that knight posted there is to prevent you from playing d5. And what is black happy about? Black is really happy about exchanges. What are my white's major plans in this positions? You need to go for the attack. Which piece will be important? The bishop will be very important in these positions. Clearly, you don't want to give it on d5 straight away, right? Simple. Like you don't want to give bishop to d5 here. You just improve black's position twofold here because you give him bishop pair. Your attacking possibility on the king side now is basically shut down, giving it away on d5, and that's clearly not helping us. So now you should look for moves which will help us develop, maybe take away some tension. And okay, so you already have bishop g5 in that in the chat. We have bishop g5. So bishop g5 also, right? If possible, I told you prevent exchanges of pieces. Bishop g5 is not really a bad choice. Let's say if I play bishop g5, what would you do here? Is anybody any looking for anything else apart from knight into g5 here in this position? Or shall we take the bishop? Queen d3, will come back to that, but do you want to take knight into g5? Yeah, exactly. White should avoid the exchange of pieces if possible, and also think about your opponent's ideas in that regard. Bishop g5, knight g5. It's going for exchanges. The more the exchanges, the easier it is for black. For like now in this position, let's for example, like let's say I play h6. Are you getting something very immediately? If not, bishop g5 is not a bad move at all. Okay, it's not a bad move, but if you can, like you can try to do better. Like black has developed, he will be playing bb7 and going for development with this. If possible, the main idea, like you should stick to it, tactical resources, and if possible, more attacking ideas to be kept. And thus, white chose a different approach. Clearly, developing the bishop, if not to g5, d2 is not very pleasing as a square. It's not very this. I understand that. One more thing I'll just show you. Greek gift idea, be careful when you execute it. It doesn't really always work. Here, this is what I was waiting for. I was thinking that some of you will be going for this and trying to mate, but then black also has defensive resources. He has knight f6, which takes care of everything instantly on h7, and then basically there is nothing. You just sacrifice the piece for absolutely nothing here. He's able to defend everything in time. Like queen h4, he can even just kick away your knight, queen, and then even go ahead and boldly capture the pawn if he feels like it. My point is, I will be going to h4 and trying to exchange this queen even further, or even g4, thus trying to do the same thing. But it doesn't really work out here. So what white did in the game is he went with knight e5. Now the point of knight e5 is he wants to keep more pieces on the board. He can try to develop the pieces, the bishop a moment to later. And I think Shreyas, you had said queen d3. Yes, you can try to utilize such ideas, try to initiate more weaknesses. For example, even in this position, queen d3 is an interesting choice because what you're thinking of is whether you can maybe develop the bishop to a more active square, whether you can initiate some weaknesses which could be useful for us later. White did it in a different way with knight e5, but the basis is the same. Try to keep more pieces on the board. Bishop d7 was played by black. Now, again, in this kind of positions, right? Black's best move is surprisingly to play g6 and bishop g7. So, people who face this position from black side, let's say you have this coming from your opening or somehow it comes in your game, remember that it's not a good idea to play h6 and defend it. Always play g6 if possible. Like, again, not when the bishop is here, okay? It is not like if your bishop is on d6, you're going to play what is happening here. If your bishop is not on f6 and it is on d6, let's just picture this bishop right here on d6, then you don't want to do it and weaken your entire king side like this. This is only if your bishop is able to retreat to g7 that you would be, or your bishop is able to retreat to f8, that you would play something like g6. But it is a much better way to defend it than h6, because the moment you play h6, white has a simple plan of queen d3 and it becomes more and more difficult for black to defend it, because eventually somewhere he may need to play g6 anyways, and then we have another weakness on h6 to worry about. So if you're playing from black side, you can keep this also in mind. And one more idea for white after playing this, a sneaky idea, is to play knight g4. Like, again, like good exchanges are important. So he can play knight g4 and trade off the bishop here, which could be really useful for him. So let's just flip it back and see what black did. Black just casually went for development with bishop e7, bishop d7. Instead of going b6 and bb7, he chose bishop d7 because he knows knight into d7 is a good exchange for him. Rook will come into the game, and the bishop is anyways not really something black is proud of. It is not really doing anything that useful at the moment. He's okay with allowing the exchange of that bishop for your good knight. So black is not going to take that. But white played queen d3 here, and immediately, like, also one more important like resource that white can play sometimes, knight g4 to try to exchange. Now, why exactly? Because you want to create imbalances. You have an IQP, you want to keep pieces, but this trades off this important defender on the king side. Black's bishop is very important, so sometimes you can go knight g4, trade off that bishop, and try to be useful. Now white played queen d3 instead. We'll see what he did. G6, bishop h6, bishop g7. And instead, like, here again, you have many choices. White can even like just defend with queen h3 and continue. There are some other tactical resources that he can play with bishop g5, etc., that we don't want to go. We'll just go to look at the simple thing that white played out in the game. Black's bishop is very useful. Like, that is, these are the important points to understand. Black's bishop is the main piece. Imagine he did not have a bishop here and your bishop is entered on h6. That would be devastating with all the weak squares that he has around the king here. Like, if you don't have this bishop on f6. So it is very important that he gets to at least trade it off. Now bishop d7, king g7, and here we come to a point where some of the pieces have gone off the board now. Now, next step is, can you really generate enough attack there on the king, the g7 king? Can we really, like, go for queen g4, queen h3, knight g4? Is it really fast enough? If not, then you should look for alternative moves, some exchanges or so, which could help us again. So white did something like he went for an exchange here, which was really useful, and that is like, but this is the point where white can immediately change the position. He can try to change the structure. Like, you have to recognize and try to understand when it's the right time to change it, which piece is the right piece to give up. And here we see that white has a way to change it. What do you think he can do in this position? What do you think white can do here in this position? Straight. He can go for changing the structure a little bit. Anybody? Yes. Knight into d5 and bishop into d5 are two ways to change. Sometimes it's better to take with the bishop. Sometimes it's better to take with the knight. Here it is better to take with the knight because the point is that he is not forced to take with his knight only. He can take with the pawn, and maybe he can like utilize, like your knight may not be as useful in this position. Like, let's say, what are the possible plans? It's still better for white, but not that useful. So knight into d5 was played out, because after this, you can see that bishop on f3. Let's say this happened on the board, then we have a dark square pawn which cannot be attacked by his bishop, but he has a light square pawn which we can indeed attack with our bishop, which would be really useful in the endgame. So that's why this exchange is better, and we don't mind if it takes the knight. And here we come across the right exchange. Normally, you wouldn't have given the bishop away, but here is already made like light squares here. He's defending his king side very effectively. My bishop no longer can be useful for any attacking resources there. So I can give it up here and try to exploit the weak position like queen b3. Now we have a symmetrical position which is entirely different, but we will be like we will not really continue in this position further too much. But the change in structure really helped us, because now the bishop is misplaced. This is basically considered like a tall pawn between these two pawns. White's knight will be much more resourceful. The position is not entirely open, and the knight is very good at maneuvering. Secondly, there's one more point, important point. There are dark squares which are weak. Like for example, black just plays something like b6. He has in like no, he cannot play b6. Let's say he plays bishop c6. Somewhere later, if he tries to bring out the queen, the dark squares also is something that he has to worry about. Your queen can easily maneuver somewhere here and knight g4, and suddenly you have some resources on the king too. It could be really useful. Your knight can be damaging, but his bishop, unfortunately, behind blocked by his own pawn, is not really going to be useful. So white is definitely much better already in this position. Just simple chess is all we saw. Black went wrong somewhere with this move bishop d7 first of all. At least he should have gone b6 and tried the same thing, because let's just see it. b6, let's say we play queen d3, g6, bishop h6, bishop g7. Now here we can see one major difference is if you play knight d5, he doesn't really have to, capture back with the pawn. He can at least keep queen d5 and keep this diagonal open for his bishop. So he's not worse here at all. You have the isolated pawn now, and the exchanges are helping your opponent. But there you can always choose a different idea altogether. Maybe just play rook c1 and continue. You can just go for development. Maybe try to maneuver your pieces somewhere, try to initiate some weaknesses. You can follow a different approach altogether. Anyways, let's move on to the next game. Now, okay, sorry, this is not the position. This is the position here. Now you can see that you're playing against an isolated pawn, and white, like we saw in the previous position, black had control over the d4 square. This time white has control over the d4 square. So we will see now how to play with without the isolated pawn against the isolated pawn. What do we do in such positions? You already know what is supposed to be done. So you're going to tell me what to do after queen b6. Try to find out what are the you already know the basis. You have understood that what is important, what is not good, what is good. Now you're playing against the isolated pawn. How do we go about it? Once again, if people have not understood clearly, you all can definitely message in the chat. Okay, like I will explain it again, not a problem. Yeah, c3 is one move, but what is the main idea, or what is the follow-up plan? Sometimes even urgency is important. Like black just played queen b6. He has not played it for like just like that. He has not played. So you should also try to understand your opponent's resources. You know the major goals. The major goals in this position when you're playing against an isolated pawn, exchanging of pieces is really useful. The more pieces off the board, right now there are 4 minor pieces on the board for each, which is not really the best of positions for the player playing against the isolated pawn. Kf knight of d4. Okay, knight of d4. I do agree. Knight of d4 is one thing. Bishop d3 though, say like see you're the one who's playing against the isolated pawn here. So your goal is not to go for extensive sacrifices and tactical resources. Your goal is to try to play or try to many exchange pieces. Bishop d3 is a good idea though. Any possible like bishop d3 is okay, I wouldn't say good idea, but at least it stops something which is an immediate threat from black side. Like, did anybody see the immediate threat? It's control. Okay, knight of d4. Yes, I agree with you. Controls the pawn just like black was doing in the previous position. But what is the urgency? Why not just play c3? Like what you said, c3. Why not just go c3 and continue? That's where you try to take into account your opponent's ideas also, the possible things that he can do. What are the things that he can do in this position? Anybody? Don't forget to see your opponent's ideas. Yes, knight of d4 and bishop g3 going for exchanges is the best approach. Take control, exchange the most important attacking pieces like the bishop on d6. But anybody figure out what is black's idea here? Nobody? It's a good thing to play knight of d4 actually immediately. You can always consolidate and play knight of d4 also in such positions. But I think he has played queen b6. So you should try to understand like he has some knight f5 ideas here. And that is an attack. Play bishop g3 calmly here. You're suddenly this comes to fruition here with that queen pinning that king here. So that was a tactical resource that black had up his sleeve. And that's why you have to play knight of d4 first, immediately. Because you're trying to do the same thing. You can consolidate with c3 later. But you're preventing that knight f5 idea that he immediately has. Also, one more thing, I think people may be wondering what after this. This is exactly the kind of thing which black wants in the position. He gets what he wants. He gets that tactical thing that he wants. And he may end up being even the pawn down. He still gets some compensation. For example, I don't know if it entirely ends up a pawn down, but let's just look at bishop f3. Queen f5, I think you will win a pawn here, but he does get some counterplay and some room to breathe, right? Queen f5, maybe. Okay, black and white may be still better here after queen takes d5. Can I do it better? Knight h4. Again, you can take queen h5. But still, like, if I go wrong somewhere, like, like bishop takes f3, bishop takes h2, knight takes h4. Black gets what he wants. Even if he does not win the pawn back in certain situations, he gets counterplay. That's exactly what you don't want to allow. Definitely, Prathamesh. You can definitely mention your comments in the comment section below rather than the live chat. That will be up so we can refer to it and we can look at it and keep it pinned. So you can definitely mention whatever ideas you have in the comments. You can join our Discord also. We have a text channel there for all your suggestions, and we can try to implement. We cannot really implement all the ideas, but we try to implement some of them as we go. So we can do some advanced mental calculations also. Here we're doing something very general. So bishop f3, like you're just trying to prevent those tactical ideas. Knight d4 is the simple way to go. Bishop g6, what does black do? He prevents the exchanging of the pieces. He understands the thing that bishop into e2 will make it much easier for white to play. Black is avoiding the exchanges. White just consolidates with c3, like you had told me. Now, black played rook f8 in the game, but I want you to just think about what if he does something like a5. You see that his idea is to play a4. Now, what is the best thing you do would you do in this position? What do you think you would do? What is the best way to deal with this against this go against this? He gives a threat. You can either stop it directly. This is the immediate threat. Sorry. You can immediately stop this threat. I'm sure with something like a4, or you can do something else also. Again, knight pot. Sometimes the move order also is important, and hence you should always verify and check it out. Like sometimes move order is very important. A4 will definitely work to block a5 and a4, and that's a good idea altogether. It's definitely good. But you should also see what your opponent could do. Like he could play knight into d4 here, and if you play c into d4, who has it helped? It has helped black. So you don't want to do c into d4. Clearly, you cannot play queen into d4 because your knight on b3 is hanging. And if you play knight into d4, maybe you could lose a pawn on b2. Now, capturing on b2 and there are some tactical risks, that's a secondary thing. First thing is you should try to see whether there is a simple way to deal with it. And then you can try to initiate such nice traps or something if it works. Okay, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think maybe it's even working because the queen can indeed escape here. And I don't see a way for us to trap it also. So if it doesn't really work, then basically it's a waste. The better way is just improve your mode. You know that knight b5, a4 means you know that your knight can head to b5, and that's a strong outpost for us. Just select a better mode. The bishop also is struggling a little bit. Let's say play bishop e5. You have avoided all those tactical things that were possible and still yet maintained a good structure, still maintained control over this. Let's say opponent plays rook d8. What are the possible moves that should come to your mind immediately in this position? d4 may be a likable threat. It's not happening immediately, but it's a likable threat that can come in the future. Should we go knight d4 or do we do something else in this position? Yes, but yeah, I will just show that in a moment. First, let's focus on this and then we'll go to that position. Or just I'll tell you what is the big drawback there. What do you think is the next thing that we should do? Just simple chess or even something like knight b d4 is one thing. Yes, you can just prevent anything to do with d4. That's also decent. Knight d4 also is decent. One more. Anything else you can think of? If not knight b d4, you can definitely go for exchanges. Which piece is helping d4 to come on the board? Maybe the bishop. Opponent plays a4. We will come back to that. We'll go back to both those things needy. So in this position, either you play knight d4 and consolidate, you go bishop g3 and try to eradicate this defender. Now this is not really needed immediately in the position. Knight b d4 is good. And there are other things also, but you can just keep it as an idea in mind. You can get rid of the defender, then d4 will probably never come easily on the court. He plays knight f5, you can further attack even this knight here. Again, d4 will never come because of bishop f5. This is the way you would try to play in the game. It's a simple idea, but here then you can get your tactical ideas like, okay, I can see that bishop d3. If he plays d4, I have some pins here, I can exploit that. I have some tactical resources here, I can go for that. That is secondary. Then you can try to establish that. If not, you should try to prevent the main idea that is happening on the board. Now coming back here, some people were saying a4. So a4 knight d6 is falling here. And again, this is a good exchange for white. First of all, I think white is just simply winning a pawn with queen to b3. You don't have anything to worry about. You end up being a pawn up to bishop. I don't think there is anything for white to worry about here at all. Pawn up, bishop pair, and he's probably going to win very soon. And second thing is somebody asked about that variation after a4. See here, knight, let's say bishop c5 play knight c7. Like, do you really want to weaken your pawns and go for his isolated pawn? Like, do you want to exchange like that? That is the first thing you should think of. Like, that is definitely not a good exchange, right? First of all, I think that will run wrong, or it will create some problems other ways also. Like, there'll be some other problems that white could face here in this position. But second thing, you're exchanging a good pawn for his burst isolated pawn. Black is trying so hard to get rid of it or exchange it, and you're doing it willingly. That is definitely not a good idea. Even like if you do this and win the pawn back, have you improved your position? No, I think you have improved more of black's position because you have weakened your structure now. You have given him the double bishop pair to play with and not really achieved much in return. Okay, so now let's go back to the game. Bishop g6, white consolidated with c3, black played rook f8, white just simply played bishop f1. He could go bishop f3 too, guys, but okay, bishop f1 was played out. Bishop e4, bishop g3, trying to exchange. That's a simple thing that you're trying to do. Bishop into g3, h into g3, a5, and this time what is the move? It's definitely not knight b5 because there is no longer bishop there. So what is the move that we can go for? This time white used some of his tactical resources which are also available to get this to work, but he played a4 in the game, and this the little bit of calculation is always needed. So this time a4 is working because after knight d4, this happened in the game by the way. But queen into b2, white has two ways that he can win the game. One is like basically after knight b5. Unfortunately, rook e2 is just too strong here. The queen is just getting trapped straight away. Like if he tries even this, like it's not just one thing here that we have. Okay, we have another idea, knight c7 also there. So basically, he cannot really take care of both the ideas. We just go knight c7 and win the exchange. And if he stops that, then we just go rook e2 and win the queen. And the second way is also bishop b5. Let's say the rook moves, and simple f3 is giving an x-ray here, which will win a piece. So there was a tactical resource here which was working for white. So tactics also important in chess, and here we have that supplemented with a position understanding. Like understanding is more important. A4 was possible here. A4 is the necessity, and that's supported by a tactical resource. If not, if A4 was not possible, then the best move for white would be not to allow A4 and A3, but at least take care of it with knight B5 and knight D4. At least this would be better, because you're still not allowing A3. That's still a weak pawn that can be exploited, and white still has good control over the position. That would be the way to go. The moment you see A4, you should not get too desperate and worried and immediately start doing this. That's the worst thing you can do, and that will worsen your position by a great margin, because that just simply gets rid of the isolated pawn. Now he has A4 to worry about. His rook also can activate there. That's only helping black. And now coming A4, knight D4, knight D4, knight C6, and white played bishop B5, and this is like, going for the right, this rook D8, and white played this. After this, it's like a little bit this, like white played this move G4, and the game went on into a completely different structure after this. But this is not entirely winning, but it is definitely a much better, easier endgame for white, because his king will easily come into the game. And okay, that's an entirely different thing. We will do this kind of things in the endgame, actually, this series that we'll be doing. But okay, that was the way thus far. What are the important points in isolated exchanges? If you're with the isolated pawn, then no exchanges. Try to use your tactical resources and ideas. Try to keep more pieces on the board. If you're playing against it, try to exchange as much as possible, and don't fall for any silly traps and tactics. Okay, let's move on to the next game. Yeah, I think Rubinstein. Yeah. So let's just see it from the opening, how this game went. It's a simple game, but let's see how he played out. So d4. You can definitely introduce him to the game. It's not like you have to give him a directional approach. Show him the pieces, and maybe he might take an interest and play with him. Nothing specific that you can do. To just see. I'm not really the best person to give an advice on that at the moment. Sneha. So c4, e6, knight c3, c5, and we see that immediately this is called the Tarrasch opening, Tarrasch defense. And as you see, after c into d5, e into d5, we have something that can go into an isolated pawn structure. Knight f3, knight c6, g3, knight f6, and then bishop g2. And black actually immediately captured on d4. Nowadays, everybody knows that this is not the best idea. Black should be playing bishop e7 and continuing in this openings, or bishop e6, whichever choice, depends on his play. C into d4 was played by black, knight into d4, and queen b6. Now, it's forcing white to immediately make a decision. What would you do in this position? Normally, what would you do in this position? Normally, you would want to play against the isolated pawn, but sometimes it's just not worth it. Like, do you think moving the knight is a good idea here? Let's say we play something like knight b3. Is that a good move? No, because his isolated pawn on d5 is much more of a problem. For example, if black is clumsy and plays something like, let's say, bishop e6, if you're not even able to capture, you can take control over the d4 square with bishop e3, and then you're back into good terms here. Castling, knight b5. Once again, you have that important square, and you can keep going in this position. But here, knight b3 immediately allows him to play d4, and the pawn is no longer weak, but it opens up even more room, because his pieces now can even flow freely with bishop e4 check, etc. So that was not a good idea. Then you should think of whether they can defend that d4 square with something like e3, but that allows black to take knight d4 and again enter a symmetrical position. Thus white went for this next idea, which is knight into c6, and now he's helping him to take connected pawns in the center. So what are the important ideas when you're playing in this position against this? Like, he will either play c5 2, and then we'll have the hanging pawns. Right now they're connected, but what are the important points? We'll just see in a moment or two. What are the important points of focus here? For example, castle bishop e7. You can do 2-3 different things here. You can either break that structure immediately There are two, three ways to break it. One is if you can push up onto b5, you can break it and maybe it could be useful. Another way is directly you can play e4 and create a break in the position. E4 is a decent idea, but it leads to some complications. White played a completely different thing, and that is he tried to keep the pawns here and exploit them by themselves, like just slowly trying to capture some important squares and try to exploit them, which is a key important weak square for black whenever this position is on the board. Anybody in the chat can highlight or tell me which square would you want to capitalize on and which piece would you like on that square. C6 and d5. You know, I just told you the basic important ideas that black could do. He could do c5, bishop e6, and try to gain some space maybe in the position. How do you think you can restrict him? E4, yes. Actually, e4, d4 we will not look at, but e4, d4 there is some e5 and there are some tactical resources. So this line also is decent. It's also possible to be played. And then black also has a tactical resource with castle. He just sacrifices a pawn and tries to go for some play with bishop e6, bishop c5. That's all opening we are not really concerned of right now. Let's just look at the simple thing. White played a simple plan here to exploit something. Can you tell me which square? Yes, the c5 square and the d4 square. These are the important squares. If you control them, then you can definitely benefit quite a lot. So anybody, can you tell me the plan in the position for white here? What do you think white did in this? Bishop e3 will also work, I think. Yeah, but that is secondary. Like again, we are not really going to go too much into giving up a pawn, and there'll be again some tactical resources. But again, it's not really needed. There's a much simpler way. You can take control of that c5 square. And how do we do that? Which are the right exchanges and which piece belongs on that c5 square? How do we do it? Yeah, bishop e3 immediately allows queen b2. So let's keep it simple, guys. Let's not go into complications. Start with the better mod, knight a4. So knight a4 is what he started with. This is Rubinstein playing white, by the way. Very strong positional player. So let's see his ideas here. Queen b5, white controlled with bishop e3, taking over that square. Black castle and white played rook c1 in the position. Now he has managed to take control of that c5 square. Now, 1 minute. He has managed to take control of that c5 square. What do you think he will do there? Like, which piece do you think he will put here more often? Knight c5 or bishop c5? What do you think he would do? I'll just give you a choice. Before I show you black's move, like, I'm just asking you a simple question here. Which piece would you want to put on c5? Which exchange is the best one in this position? The knight is what you would want to put on c5, okay? Why exactly did you choose the knight here? Just think about it yourself. Bishop c5 to exchange. Okay, so many people are saying knight out to c5. See, when you put a knight out to c5, you're not forcing any exchange. It's not like, let's just say I play something like h6. Now, just this is just for, like, let's say you play knight c5. Let's forget about the b2 pawn also. Is he forced to take on c5 in this position? Sorry, what did I... Is he forced to take on c5? Not really. You're not forcing him to do that. He can just go about his development also. And your knight on c5 is definitely dominating, but how to make it much more useful? Let's say you want to bring your other pieces into the game. Where would you put them? You can take over the d4 square or so, but black also has one more idea up his sleeve in such position, is to try to initiate exchange with his own knight. And that is where you will have problems, because let's say here or even here sometimes knight d7 is also played out. But let's just give an idea. Later, after this exchange, he will get c5 going. If not like this, then maybe this way. He will get c5 going, and you're not getting the control of that c5 square very effectively. So bishop c5 is the better exchange here immediately, because that forces an exchange. You also have one weak pawn on e2 to worry about actually. And again, after, let's say he plays rook e8, you can think of playing e3 here and consolidating. It looks like a weak move, but this gives your queen some breathing room, can go and develop somewhere else, or on d4. Your queen can do the job which was the bishop was doing, and you get more and more ideas. Let's say the queen moves, the rook moves. Your bishop also can join in on f1 and maybe create problems for this queen. You get much more ideas. And let's say he does this way. and tries to initiate the same exchange, you can easily consolidate and start targeting his weak pawns by putting out a strong structure here. Bishop stays bad by itself. But with more pieces, what happens is he gets the chance to generate some counterplay. Imagine his bishop still being on the board. He could have tried some sort of counterplay ideas. So the better exchange is definitely to play bishop c5 and exchange that bishop. This is the way you try to understand which exchange will be more helpful and which not. Of course, if you want to do queen d2 and play bishop at 6, you will not do that. But I don't think that is really working or the better idea here. Now, let me just flip it from black side. Okay, let's look at it from your opponent. Like, not always will you be in the better position, right? Not always will you have the winning position. What do you think you should target here? I had just highlighted, and let's see how many people remember and what you should do as black here. You should also try to give up the best resistance or the best defense. Give up a good fight. You know bishop c5 is coming already. You have understood the position. What do you think black should do? Try to target the weaknesses that he has, temporarily stop bishop c5 maybe if possible. Something like that is what you should do. Figure out which one is the better also of the two, or whatever ideas you have, which one is the best. Which are the weak points in white's camp here? What do we do? Bishop a3. Okay, bishop a6 you mean. Okay. Yeah, bishop a6 is one thing. Basically, you're attacking the e2 point. But again, like, you can also sometimes choose the better square to attack it also. You have two ways to attack it and see where it will be a problem for you and where it will be even more useful for you. You can do bishop a6 also, but you can do it on a much better square. Because see, if the bishop a6, it's one more threat, right? But let's say I take care of it somehow, not this way. Let's say I take care of it this way. Yeah, let's say I take care of it this way. You will not be able to utilize this bishop even further, and maybe it's not very nicely placed on this a6 corner square here. So what to do here? You can go bishop g4. Exactly, you can just improve your own idea also sometimes. Now right here in this position, let's say you play rook e1. It's kind of the same, but you open up a little bit more ideas, and your bishop is flexible. Like, it can go to something else, do something else also, whereas bishop on a6 is only committed to one diagonal. So the better idea is always bishop g4. Rook e1 was indeed possible, but I think black saw that. Let's say he plays rook e8. Again, he has to worry about the e2 pawn. His focus with bishop c5 is not really going to work because the e2 pawn again is a weakness that he has to worry about. Rook b8, on the other hand, is not really attacking b2, right? So white can still probably play bishop c5, and after bishop c5 capture even with the rook temporarily, and later maybe shift it back and like try to get the knight to c5 if he wants to, or he can just do b3 and then you can play bishop c5. And also the a7 pawn is something that you should also not forget about. Like, white can also use some tactics like this and maybe even win a pawn in the process, so should be careful about that also. So bishop g4, white immediately went and committed this move f3. Sorry, where is this? Yeah, bishop g4, not this way. Yeah, black went with bishop g4, the castle, rook c1, bishop g4, white went with this move f3. And there is a reasoning. Normally, I would never suggest this move f3 to you, but we'll see how the game went. Black doesn't have any immediate idea. And bishop e6, bishop c5, right, exchanges, rook e8, rook f2. Let's just see how he improved the position. Okay, knight d7, bishop e7, e7, queen d4 took control of that c5 square. There is always something that you do that is e2 is weak, and f3 is something that you should try to avoid. But here we'll just see what Rubinstein did in the game. Rook e8. This is what actually is one thing which has improved in the recent times. We tend to give up a much better fight than in the slightly earlier times. Like, sometimes the moves, like, you could go for something a little bit more aggressive sometimes. Here we don't see that. Like bishop f5, attack e2, try to initiate some weaknesses. That would be the better way to go, which we'll do in some later stages again. Active defense, counterplay. But rook e8 was played, bishop f1, and white just slowly tried to improve. e3. Black played a very defensive approach. This is not what you want to do. Every piece is badly placed and you're just on the back foot. Allowed white to simply improve. Knight c5, rook c5, rook c2, and then suddenly after b4, like, b4 was not entirely needed, but the final, I want to show you that instructive position here. exchanging the queens. Like this was the right time to do it because you're attacking every weakness here, and black has absolutely no way to generate any counterplay. Next, after queen into d4, the king started pouring in, and then the a6 pawn is also falling. White just simply went on to win this very easily. But the main point of focus was that knight a4 and that c5 point that we were focusing on. Which are the right exchanges? Exchanging the bishop. In which positions, which are the better exchanges? That is also one more important thing to keep in mind. Anyways, let's just go next. Yeah, here 1 minute. Let me just. Yes. Now here in this position, you know the possible things that white does. White went on to play knight e4. Now I'm going to ask you a question here. Is this a good move, or is it a good exchange? Is it a bad exchange? What do you think, Chad? Yeah, rook e8 Akshaya, like that was like a little bit passive play, and maybe black could have done better. And we will see that later. Like in recent times, we see more of active counterplay. In the older days, like sometimes people used to just like to play lot of passive chess. Now it's changed, and we'll be looking at how to play active defense, etc. I'll show you from my games also. How I have sometimes played some active defenses. So knight e4, is it a good idea here? He wanted his rook behind on the c file, is what you understood correctly, Gautam, but that was not really the best of things to do. So, Tushar, you're saying this is a good exchange for white, is it? So, have you been watching from the start, Tushar? Have I really told you like knight e4? What does white do in such positions? This is what should come to your, should be at the back of your mind. I'm just training you one or two positions here, just two sets kind of positions. But once you get a hang of it, whenever you play or whenever you accidentally even drop into such positions, you may not be getting these positions on the board. Sometime or the other, you could get it, and you will recognize what are the important things to take care of, what are the important things we don't do, what are the right things to do, etc. Is 94 a good thing for white here? It's most definitely not, because you don't want to exchange your pieces, guys. Like you want to keep more pieces on the board as white here. Now, before we continue with what is bad for black and so, can you tell me what should white do in this position? You have an IQP. You should not. You have an isolated queen's pawn. Let's put it that way. Some people are getting confused if I say IQP, but isolated queen's pawn here, or isolated pawn basically. The main thing is don't go for exchanges. Try to generate more and more attacking possibilities. So, what kind of move will you be playing here in this position? You know that black is consolidating here. We cannot really do d5. If possible, you should always look for it. Okay, if possible, d5 should be at the back of your mind. If there is some tactic which I can make work, excellent. But here maybe it is not really possible. So let's go for something simpler. What do you think we can do? We have knight e5 as one idea. What else? There are different ways you can continue. It's not just one move. All you need to do is need to know the basis, like what is the important things that you don't need to do. No exchanges, of course. Knight e5 is one thing. Anybody else with any other plan? Yeah, I'm asking for a plan for a move for white, which you would do. Knight e4 was played in the game, which is a bad move. You don't want to go for exchanges. And again, whenever you see a plan, you can see if there's a better way to do it. For example, somebody said bishop c2 and bishop b1. Okay, sometimes this move bishop c2 is better. This is just extra information, but sometimes the move bishop c2 is better. Your idea, I understand, it's to attack here, which is a good idea, but sometimes it's better to go bishop b1. It depends on the position. Like here, when I go bishop c2, I keep one more idea open, which is to activate my bishop to the other diagonal also faster. So that can be sometimes useful, but in this position, I think it's better to go here, because anyways, I can maybe try to activate it to the other side via a3, bishop a2, and I don't run into some annoying x-rays on that c file. Like that is also one more thing. But somebody said queen c2. See, this is what it's better to have the other way around, like bishop, the queen ahead, because you immediately give a mating threat on h7 there. Very useful and very important. Now, let's say your opponent plays bishop b1. What are the things that black should not do? What do you think black should do? You know that queen d3 is coming next. Let's just take rid of this all arrows. You know that queen d3 attacking h7 is the immediate threat. Do you play h6 here in this position? Yes, you can obviously play rook f. There are many ways to play. I'm just like, let's just say one more thing from black's point of view. What do you do as black in this position? You know, queen d3 attacking h7 is the immediate threat. Do we go with h6 here and get rid of it, or is there something else we should try to do? This will help you in your games if you come across this position. But do we need to do g6 immediately here? That is also one more thing that you should keep in mind. If g6 is like, he's not played queen d3 yet. So just see if you can improve and see if there's any other thing that you can do before you play g6. Yeah, actually, we had continued from yesterday, and I was I was thinking of what exactly we were doing. But okay, next tomorrow I will have the points up on the screen. These are the basic points only. We are doing the pawn structures from yesterday, but today we were focusing on IQP. I will have it in the description later. Nahid Hassan. G6, as he just loses a piece. I don't see how G6 is losing a piece. But yes, knight d5 is one move you can get in between there. You know you're going to play g6. G6 is the better way to defend such positions. Looks very odd, but again, don't go and always play g6. But it looks very odd to weaken, and you normally know that this is a bad idea. But it's a much better idea than playing h6 and defending. We'll come back to that. Like, let's say he plays bishop h6. The main key point is you have a bishop here that can exchange the piece. You exchange that dark square bishop immediately, and at least it's not like you're getting mated quickly here. Like knight e5, bishop f8. You have still kept control. You have still blocked his bishop. Important bishop there. Bishop queen battery, very strong. And you're trying to even exchange the dark square bishop. It makes it much easier for black to play. But the most common mistake I see is now in the opening itself, black plays h6 here. And that is where white tries to exploit on the maximum potential. Because let's say he plays bishop h4 and black plays clumsy with rook c8. He runs into queen d3 first. Now g6 is not very ideal because it's weakening even further. And if you don't play g6, you have to use your other resources, which may sometimes not be enough. Like here, knight into d5 followed by bishop f6 is losing. Clearly nobody I think will be wanting to play g5 in this position. It looks bad, is bad. And if you play g6, now you can have other ideas that you can exploit. Just simple knight e5, knight g6 has opened up. Some people may have a rook on e1, let's say already. They may look at rook into e6 and queen g6. That's all because of this one move, h6. Let's say the bishop was on the other side here on c1. Even in that situation, after queen d3, if that knight comes under attack somehow, again g6 is not possible because of this move h6. So one thing is, like, don't unnecessarily move your pawns. And in certain positions, like here, we're looking at a certain set of positions, IQP, etc. Keep the option of seeing whether you can play g6. Don't always rush into playing h6 and right to it. Knight d5 was a good way. G6 will take care of everything. Now white played knight e4. You just happily take the exchange bishop into e4, and black played rook d8. But okay, you're getting the exchanges going, and all you have to do is focus on d4. Is white immediately losing? Not really. It's not immediately losing. But again, in this position, white has no pieces left for, like, a strong attack on the board. Like, he doesn't really have anything. Even if he lifts the rook up, he doesn't have a dark square bishop. Neither does he have a light square bishop. He doesn't really just have the pieces. Black is already on his way to try to capture or maybe take control of this. And otherwise also he could have some, if he can exchange the queens, that could also be good. He has simple ideas, and white just doesn't have enough pieces on the board. Let's move on to the next one. Now here in this position, it is black to play. Black can play in 2-3 different ways. He can play b6 and allow him, like, opponent to give isolated pawn, hanging pawn, or play bishop e to castle. Like, he can do it this way. He can take on d4 and take the isolated pawn too. And this is what he did. Now why he did this scene to d4 is because he felt like the king is in the center and I have a lot of ideas popping in quickly. I wanted to now look at the position as white here and tell me what is white's best capture, which piece would you capture it, and how would you continue in this position. Simple play. It's just, again, once again, you're playing against the isolated pawn, and sometimes you have to also look at odd captures, and you already know the right exchanges, so we'll not spend too much time here. But what do you think white should do in this position? Dark squares are completely weak. Thank you, Siddhant. Knight takes d4. Excellent choice, Prathamesh. Knight takes d4 is what Prathamesh wants to do, and then take his king out for a walk, Prathamesh. King e2 is it? Because I don't see any piece you can bring in between here. You want to take king e2 and take the king to f3? I don't think anybody would want to play like this, right? King to e2 and king to f3 and then try to bring the king. No, that is not the way. So knight into d4 is a blunder here. Clearly, you don't want to take your king out for a walk here. You want to castle. So knight into d4 definitely is not fine at all here. It's like a big, big, big mistake. Bishop into d4 also, like what would you play here? Like you should understand like what is better and thus just simply make that simple decision which one is the better choice here, and sometimes even look for the odd moves which you would not want to do in the game. Queen d4 is an odd choice attacking g7, but it is a good choice because we know that black can defend he cannot play g6 here. Clearly he cannot play g6 here, so the only way for him to defend is to play bishop f6. And what are the important points in isolated pawn structures? You're happy with exchanges, and you're happy with especially the exchange of the dark square bishop here. Suddenly after this, you're trying to even exchange the bishop. You're trying to exchange this bishops. Do this. You're trying to exchange these bishops. You have taken care of any annoying bishop b4, queen a5 checks, etc. And you're also on your way to even just develop and castle. You're also not allowing your opponent to play a move like d4, and you're taking care of everything basically immediately. You're doing the main important things that you need, and also like not allowing him the counterplay. Like if he plays queen a5, bishop c3 is coming on the board, and I think it's time for him to resign because there are two attacks already on the board. So queen d4 was a nice move, and sometimes you have to also look out for this, basically focusing on the fact that you can go for exchanging of the dark square bishop. It's a much more useful thing to exchange it and play along. Anyways, let's go next. If you can get some exercises in here. Now we have complete control over the center. This is not IQP anymore on the board. This is something different. I again want you to find out what should white do. We are doing a small exercise kind of thing after learning here. So you can tell me your move or possible plan that you would want to do. Possible plan doesn't have to be always the exact move or something. I want to do this is also good. Like I want to exchange queens. I want to exchange bishop. That is also good. Then you can see how to implement it. Basically, I want you to understand the ideas. Doesn't have to be the best move or nothing like that. You can just tell me what idea you will follow in this position. Push instead h5 instead of castling. Okay, we'll have a look at that. I will have a look at that later. Okay, now some people are saying bishop g4 because light squares are weak. Okay, so you want to play bishop g4 and exploit it, but which piece will be the most effective while exploiting it? Light squares. Is it the knight or is it your own bishop? I understand the point that you have. First of all, when you play a move like bishop g4, let's say to exchange the bishops, the point is he is not forced to trade it off. Now, are you going to keep chasing him? You can, like, if you should understand like which exchange is also good. Bishop g4, yeah, I agree with you. You want to take control of the light squares. First thing is he's not forced. He can play bishop f7. What do you have after that? Do you still think you can chase it off? If not, that is why you should take a step back yourself and see, okay, whether I can improve it. Now, one more thing I'd like to ask you, like, is exchanging the knight for the bishop going to be useful? The knight is having a very strong outpost on g6, but how long is it going to stand, like, be there? Depending on that, you can make a plan. It's not just like, in most of the games, it's not just like there is only one way to continue or there is always that best move. It's not like that. So there are different ways and you should try to figure out which plan you're going for and try not to mix both of them. For example, somebody is saying knight f4. If you're playing knight f4 and bishop f7, would you play bishop g4 here? No, you can always try to improve your idea and see somebody said bishop h5 can be played to exchange that light square bishop and you can try to benefit from that. Immediately I improved my move order. because I know that even if he gives the bishop away with this, the light squares are weak and my bishop can be very strong in exploiting all the light squares that I have here, especially if I have the bishop and queen combo. You know that bishop and queen can battery along this diagonal, and that can be very strong. But white can also improve something else before he does that. Bishop d3, bishop d1, queen d3. Yes, you're right about that. You can go for that battery. Knight f4 is better than something like bishop g4, because now you just wasted a move on that bishop g4 thing. You could have just played knight f4 immediately. That is where you can improve. But before that, white did even something more than that. He instilled another weakness that could be useful for him. What do you think he did in this position? Before he went for that knight f4 move, he made another weakness in black's camp that could be very useful for him to attack in the later stages somewhere. Always try to see if you can better your plan. Somewhere or the other, you could find something, maybe you don't, but he found something else here and went with f4, f5, is it? Why? Why f4, f5? Whenever you're playing, right, if you're not having a mate or you're not having some material you're winning up, let's see if there is a simpler way without, making weaknesses. You just made a weakness and gave him some counterplay. And black could easily very well exploit. It's not like it's minus or something to play f4, but is it needed? You just took away a square also. You're allowing some bishop f5 ideas also. I don't think it is a good idea to unnecessarily make a weakness like this. That is not a really good idea here. Same goes for h4, h5. Like, just think about it and see whether that knight on g6 really, like many people, this is a very common idea. Just instill that I have a nice strong knight on g6. See if it will be really the main point of focus here. Whether that will be the most useful thing to do. Or my knight, what happens like if the knight comes to d7 and knight f8? What am I going to do after this? Is this really that helpful at the moment? Maybe not. Maybe there is something else on the other side of the board that I could use to my benefit rather than wasting time here, because the knight is anyways going to be exchanged. And after capturing, it's not like, let's say I capture even here, it's not like the h5 pawn is really helping us in anything. Your bishop could have still batteried here. It still was the same. It doesn't really help us that much. It's definitely looking an excellent pawn here, but not that helping that much. So maybe before that, white captured d into c5. And yes, these two pawns can be exploited somewhere later. These are the hanging pawns that we have on the board, and they could be very well good weaknesses to be exploited and also open up some nice tactical resources, etc. For example, knight f4 was played on the board. Let's say he plays knight d7. Yeah, here itself you have a small, like very small tactic that you can do in this, which could be very useful to win some material. Anybody? It's nothing complicated, so it's just a very simple one. Don't get too excited about something. A simple chess will also be good enough. If anybody has ideas, you can let me know. Based on hanging pawns are always vulnerable, especially if they don't have active defense from either the bishop on f8 or rook on c8. They're always vulnerable like this. They need pieces to defend them. That is one important thing. They're not connected. They're not supporting each other. So knight into e6 and then queen into e6. What is the tactic? What? Knight into e6 and rook c5 is not possible here because the knight is on d7. Maybe we could just improve something before that and then go for this. Yeah, knight into e6. Always, like, even if you find something like that, right? See if you can find a better order also sometimes, okay? Just to give knight into e6, queen into e6, bishop f3 is good. You're attacking d5, and like I said, the hanging pawns need the defense, and the knight, once it moves, c5 is going to hang. And there is no good way for black to defend those pawns. He can maybe d4, but then a8 is hanging. So basically, he's losing a pawn by force here. Same goes for bishop f3 directly. Sometimes this is a better order. Knight moves, you can just capture and win a free pawn here on c5 straight away, which is immediately winning. Bishop g4 in between also is a good idea, by the way. This also sometimes is useful, and the sole reason of this kind of move is to make more weaknesses in black's camp, which could be useful, and then come back, and once again you're winning the pawn again, knight f6, rook c5, you win a pawn. So small tactic also available here that is possible. So black played bishop f7, white played queen c2, and just kept attacking those weaknesses like knight d7, rook ft1. Somewhere black will have a problem, so black immediately tried to get rid of it with d4. He has to do it because he's behind in development. And then white played bishop c4, and now he's going to go to exploit those light squares on the king side to his benefit. Bishop c4, queen c4, king h7. Thus far we have done everything positionally correct here, and now black is planning something like knight e5, knight b6, and try to improve. And this is a time when there is a change in the position that you can go for, like you can try to go for something concrete. Now if you just start playing positionally, you cannot just play positionally all the game. You have to find something, like let's say queen e6 is one example here, and maybe you can win a pawn because of that fork here. If he goes rook e8, you have this and you win an exchange. So this is what I'm talking about. And if he moves here, you can win a pawn. These are the kind of things, just an example. Again, white had probably queen e6, also some queen d3, queen c2. White chose something completely different. He played b4, and from here on, like the position started changing completely. Well, okay, we cannot like, okay, I'll be streaming every day. Like, it's not like I need to stream until 9, but I'll be streaming every day. This I will have class also. So okay, it's good that you're enjoying it. Do join us every day for the next 14 days, and after that also we'll be having videos also up on our channel regularly. So do stay tuned, guys. Any difficulties, you all can pop it in there. If it's not in the live stream, then we'll get it up in the video if possible, so we can give you um we can help you improve chess. That is the main goal. And after this, it's not really important. But now let's just see what I can do here. Uh, okay, we'll see two more of this. And after this is not really, this is a completely different structure now. But basically, until here, it was very important. Then finally, there's a change. And he changed the structure. And after that, cb4 and rook d4, that was completely winning for white. Try to use that weaknesses that we have created. Let's go next. Okay. We'll just see the first few moves. White played a3, bishop cd4, ed4, and black took on c3 this time. Again, we have the isolated pawn, but instead of retreating back, he went with bishop c3, bc3, and bb7. So this time we have, like, let's say if you push c4, you'll be having hanging pawns or connected pawns in the center. How do we play with them? Like, now we were looking at positions like how to play against them. So again, how to play with them is also important. Let's just first go with normal development. Nothing specific, normal development. Don't unnecessarily be in the rush to push c4, because that is the exact kind of weakness which black can easily exploit. So let's go for normal development. Queen c7, just defended with bishop g2. Once again, not rushing into c4. Rook e8, queen e2. Maybe some ideas of e5, so he took care of it, queen e2. Black played rook c8. When you see rook c8, what is the immediate threat that we see in this position? That is important to recognize. And that is what you should not allow. Like, what if white does h3? What would you do as black in this position? Black has some threat, and that is important to find. What do you think black will do here? Well, glad that you guys enjoyed it. If you all enjoyed it, definitely hit the like button, guys. That helps bring more people, and your support means a lot. So do hit the like button and subscribe. And okay, that's well, middle game is all about everything. It's just not about positional things. So we'll be looking at other tactical patterns also down the road. It's 14 days long, guys. So a lot of days here. Well, it's very difficult to make guesses like that, Gautam. Earlier also people have asked me, like, it's very difficult to make guesses like that. Um, it depends. See, if you're playing a lead chess, you have 2200. What kind of chess you're playing? How fast you're, like, what you're playing, fast blitz chess. It depends on what kind of like chess, also what kind of games you play. If you're playing a lot of tactical play, then maybe you're good at tactics, but you never know other part of it. In a classical game, let's say you're playing 1.5 hour each, maybe there things will be slightly different, right? It'll be slow chess, and not every, like, it will not be possible to immediately get everything tactically. People will be seeing it, so it's very difficult to assume from online chess. And to be honest, I don't really have not analyzed that way quite a lot, but Just because, like, say I'm 2700 on leeches or 2600 on leeches doesn't mean that I'm 2600 in real chess. So, and I'm just 100 points lesser, but that doesn't mean much actually. So it depends actually what kind of chess. And yeah, many factors here. It's very difficult to tell you. And at least I'm not a specialist in that assumption. Rapid chess, okay. At least that is better. Maybe you can, but still, I'm not really going to. I don't have a guess actually, Gautam. So to be honest, can only guess like if I'm giving personal attention to a student. Otherwise, I just don't want to take random guesses. Knight d5, knight f4 is one plan. What else? There's a much better. Knight d5, knight f4 is not uh, the most important or the best idea for black here. There's another idea here. And knight d5, knight f4 means immediately people should be aware of what kind of tactical resources are there, and their eyes should immediately go to it. Knight d5 means like Greek gift. This will be doing later, guys. Anyways, tactical patterns and how to recognize them, how to many different tactical patterns, etc. Not just solving, but how to recognize them, get them on the board. We'll be doing this somewhere later in the 14 days somewhere. But here now, what do you think you will do? Okay, you have some like people who are saying 1700. So yeah, maybe some people itself can give them. I can't take a real guess there. It's a 500-point difference. So very difficult. Yeah, bishop d5, bishop c4 is the move. That's the most important one. You want to get rid of this bishop here. And once you get rid of this bishop, then it's very easy to take control. What did we do again in the Rubinstein game? We did the same thing. Why did the same thing by exchanging that bishop? We did with knight a5 and bishop c4. This is where you need to recognize what is important, what like you should try to replicate it also if possible, and that is what is important. Bishop d5 and bishop c4, try to get rid of that light square bishop. Suddenly you have great control over the d5 and c4 square and no attack whatsoever on this king side. The things you have to worry about after knight d5 are things like bishop h7. Always be on the lookout. This is called a Greek gift, by the way. Here it's not working because white just gets, sorry, knight black just gets knight f6, and it takes care of both the ideas at once. But you have to be on the lookout for these kind of tactical resources also. Very important. Now rook c1 was thus played because he realizes that maybe black can play bishop d5, and after bishop d5, black still went with it. He played c4. Now we have the hanging pawns on the board, and the real thing will start. Now we don't need to all guess all the moves or so. We're just trying to understand how white played it out. So he played a4 in this position because he wants to maybe somewhere keep the option of getting rid of that weak pawn, exchange it off. Black played queen c6 to attack it, and white played bishop f4. Now, at the moment, if you take queen into a4 like he did in the game, white gets rook a1, and he goes for the a7 pawn. So that's a fair trade-off because now this pawn was indeed a weakness. This pawn is not. So if you get rid of it, black will end up with b6 as a potential weakness. Like we'll see that. Black should have maybe not gone this. First of all, black's move bishop d5 itself is a waste. He could have done something else. Maybe play again, very difficult to come up with a move here, but maybe play something like knight g4. Maybe try to initiate some weaknesses and try to look for e5. Something like that would have been necessary, but here he just played too passively. After a4 queen c6, everything is helping black here, white here. Maybe g6, something will be needed differently. It's again a very difficult position for black, but what he did in the game made it so easy for white. That rook into a7. 95, a Greek gift. Yeah, bishop h7 was not working like we saw. How to, yeah, we improve dynamic play, that we'll be doing in the later stages, like how to improve with active defense, counter play, etc. How to play dynamically. I mean, it's 14 days long, and we will be doing something about that later. Of course, that has been one of the important parts of the game. Well, I'll be doing that later. Of course, that will come like over time. It will not come simply. It will come through experience, and you will understand from your own mistakes. I can give you some pointers like I'm doing right now, and you can keep those in mind, and from there you can try to improve on your own. You'll have to also practice, but tactics is not like it's one of the main parts, but this is also very important. because otherwise you'll have no idea what to continue. Like this is a tactical resource that black missed out on. He played rook a3 badly and you got d5. So very important. You cannot just play like I will just keep playing positionally. I will try to move my bishop. I'll try to. That will not always work. So you have to find the right balance between tactical play and positional play. But let's say black plays h6, taking care of that. Now you don't have a tactic to finish off your opponent, right? So you have to find the right positional approach, which point you would hit, which are the important possibilities that black can annoy you with. Accordingly, you can make the move. Like you just saw what black did a moment ago. What is white's best move here? Based on that, just sole one move that you have seen, last move, black played rook a3. So what is white's move that you can play out here in this position? You can just stop that. You know that b6 is a weakness. That way you would try to go about. You cannot really glue knight e5 and blunder and allow your opponent queen g2. That's a tactic you would probably never miss. But any ideas? See, losing on time, right? There's one important thing which we'll be doing in the later stages is pattern recognition. That will also help you improve quite a lot when, like seeing chess. Like when you're solving tactics, tactics is the best way to improve your speed. Queen b2 is the move. Tactics is the best way to improve your speed. But if you solve them in a particular pattern or so, then you tend to not miss. For example, bishop h7. Like whoever have solved that like 100 times will not miss it on the board. They will always see it. They will not forget about bishop h7 tactic as a Greek gift available in that position. Similarly here, rook a3, if you have solved a lot of tactical patterns based on back rank, a player who is aware of it will not miss d5 as a resource because queen e8 is a nice tactical resource that was available. So that is the point like you have to understand. You have to try to improve there. Automatically speed will come in and improve. But it will take time. It is not going to be magical and happen just like that. It will take some effort. Who asked me that, Tushar, it will take some effort, right? It will take some time. It is not going to be an immediate effect. It's going to take time. Woodpecker Method is a good book which I've always recommended. That's definitely a very nice by Hans. Very nice book written there. Anyways, here after this we don't really need to see it because the position has completely changed. Now we'll just do four exercises. Not four actually, just two exercises because these are difficult. Um, Actually, not that. I don't think it will be difficult for you, but like just two exercises, guys. 1 minute. Just see which game. Okay, let's do. Now here, sometimes you have to also like all the ideas, and sometimes you have to find the tactical. Here it's white to play. How does white continue in this position? If you see something tactical, that's quite good. But even if something simple, also that is also fine. I wouldn't mind either if you tell me some. Just give me an idea for white here in this position. You know that exchanges are not good. Some exchanges are good, etc. Based on that, what move would you try to play in this position? Well, I have the position already ready in my this. This has come from a game, and I have kept a database on that. That's why I have it here. There is some tactical solution also. Simple way also is good enough here, but you can tell me what you think. Just two exercises based on this. What do you think white would do here in this position? Rook e1. Exactly like that is what I wanted you to look at. Like you can try to, initiate some kind of tactical resource, some kind of exchange. Basically, it's like there is a tactic here which I will show you in a moment. But even the simple rook e1, initiating some dangerous tactical resources, it's a nice way because that will spoil his structure. There is one more way to do it. You know about bishop h7, you know about rook lifts, etc. Which piece is being an important defender for the black king? h3. No, not h3, Siddhant. Like that is useless. That's not really needed here. But d5 is definitely one thing that you would look at, Varun, but d5 is a little too aggressive, maybe. Maybe it works out. I'm not calculated d5. But let's say I'm focusing on the simple thing. Rook e1 is good. Bishop f8 is there. That is true. Like bishop f8 is there. But let's say I'm now focusing on the black king here. Even here itself, I could do it. I can try to eradicate the important defender. Like Nightbot, I'll show you the tactic that's available in this position in a moment. But basically, what we're trying to do is trying to, let's say, figure out a way to initiate tactics. Not always will be able to find the tactical resources. It's not a common pattern or something. But this is a common idea, right? Knight f7 queen e6. Similarly, let's say the important defender is the knight. You can try to play knight g4, get rid of it, and then your d5, sorry, that bishop is going here, and d5 and bishop h7, some ideas have opened up relatively nicely here. You can try to do that also. Even your move d5 looks interesting, by the way. Maybe it works out. I've not looked at d5 here. Need a little bit calculation. But it sounds interesting after this, right? Maybe some bishop h7, and I think you're crushing in your opponent with queen f7 to follow. I think looks nice. ad5, I don't know what is happening. Could work out, or not sure. It could indeed work out, but okay, let's not spend too much time calculating. This is also still better for white, by the way, because this bishop doesn't have a really good square to go to, and the moment it goes here, it does release some weak squares like c7 that white can take over. Now, coming to the tactical resource, anybody had any other idea here? Was a difficult one slightly, but I'll show you the idea what it is. Knight into f7 is a tactical idea which is possible here. Slightly difficult one actually. I shouldn't have chosen this one, but d into e5, like the moment the knight moves, you have a strong attack ensuing here, and it needs a little bit of understanding. But after queen h5, like if he just gives away the piece, he ends up in a completely lost position because he doesn't really have a good way. Like if he gives up here, probably everything is smashing and crushing through. So ending up in a horrible position either ways. Queen h5 also is good. So he has to keep that piece, and after queen h5, let's say king f8, queen f7, you can see that intuitionally this was played out. White is having just a very strong attack which is going through. If you're not sure what is the way to continue, you can initiate a small tactic with rook e1, or you can try to take away a defender with this, or look forward to your d5. D5 is actually very interesting and nice. I like the move d5 actually. It looks quite good, although I'm not sure if it 100% works, but it's a good idea to keep in mind. Let's go to the next position, and that's the last one we'll do. How do we get something to work here in this position? What is the most natural idea? Like I said, black has done the right thing. He has played g6. So there is a need for a little bit of urgency right here. You need to do something a little bit quickly. You know what black will play in this. Let's say if I give you a choice, black can play bishop f8 and get rid of this, but black can do one more thing, which is even more of a problem. If you can exchange your light square bishop, then your attack will basically not be very strong enough on that side. So based on that, what do you think white did in this position? h4. Yes, okay, h4 is possible. But what is h4? Which piece will h4 use for the attack? It will use the bishop and the queen for the attack with h5. That is the first thing you should see, which pieces will be more useful. Not your dark square bishop, but your light square bishop and queen. And the problem is that black is trying to exchange of not your queen, but okay, you cannot do it immediately, but the bishop. If you can exchange that bishop, your attack on the king side is not going to be as strong. Now h5 is not doing anything immediately, at least, and black can maybe use the same thing that we have been seeing for 2-3 positions now, rook c4, and then you can try to exploit knight e5. Knight e5 also, right? Like knight e5 also. What if I do knight a5 kind of thing? Are you having the tactic to work? If not, then maybe you have to look at something else. Like knight e5, like what if I do this? The only way knight e5 would be good if you can make some tactic work on this side of the board. If not, then maybe you have to look at something differently. Because I don't think it is working. If I play knight g6 at g6, bishop g6, it's not like there is a mate there and is able to probably escape. Like, let's just look at it, guys. If I take here, then white can just take knight e7 intermisso and then capture. He ends up being a pawn up. So I just take here, and I don't need to take this finally, right? So I think I can move my queen to d5, get in some attacking resource here. And still I don't see it, like whether you have a mate. Maybe bishop f7, do you have a mate? But really, I can still, like, escape. I don't see a mate here. Maybe, wait 1 minute. Okay, maybe I have to be a little bit more careful. I can't be so relaxed. I think I'm not okay there. Or maybe I can do bishop f8 and then try to escape. And now there is no mate. Bishop f7 or bishop h7, there is king h8. So bishop f7, king f7, queen h7, and I think king f6, and I'm probably kind of safe here. Looks bad, but it is kind of safe here. So this tactic is not really immediately working, knight e5, and the main thing is exchanging the bishops is a bad idea. So d5 is the way to go because he's forced to take on d5. He cannot really move it. d6 is crashing through, and after ad5, bishop d5. Let's say black played queen c7. What do we do as white now? Right here in this position, what is the way to continue? Again, black has an idea of his own, right? I'm sure some of y'all must have spotted black's hidden idea here. Knight e5 is one thing that he's planning to do to get rid of the bishops, but there's one more thing he's planning to do, and that is, what is it, guys? No, he's using this, so maybe he can plan to do knight b4 and exploit something. That's a pattern that you should be aware of, and you will not miss it. Like, even if you're looking at it in 10 seconds, you will find that knight b4 is one more thing that black has done on the board. He's not only planning to just simply develop, he's also maybe looking at something more than just development here. Knight c4 is also another thing here. And now if you have solved like patterns and all, you will immediately know what to do, how to draw that some pieces out. And yeah, exactly, knightbot has said bishop f7 and queen b3. That's a pattern you should know. The king is coming out and probably get mated. I mean, you should look at it and not just immediately rush and say queen b3 is a mate, of course, but most likely king coming out here should be exploited, and that's exactly what we see here. After king comes out, what is the best continuation? Bishop g5 is definitely looking good for black now, because I think cannot go with bishop g5 straight away. The king is now happy to run away, and then that's exactly what you should not do. Some people will be quite excited about playing g4 and g5. Now sometimes this works, but this is the last thing you should look at. So let's see if there is something better. You don't want to expose your king and, like, give him some chances. So knight g5 is the move, because you're planning this, you're planning queen e6, you're planning knight h7, you're planning knight e4. There are just too many things for black to take care of. For example, knight d8 takes care of three things, but unfortunately the fourth thing is just not there. Black cannot really do it. And after the king cap comes to f5, then you can probably just assume that he's probably going to get mated. If you have calculated until knight g5 and see that the king cannot escape, knight h7 is coming, then maybe you can say, okay, it's fine. I know that he's finally going to get mated, and if it doesn't get mated after coming here, that's just bad luck. It's okay. He's going to get mated somehow or the other. This is intuition that you're going to use, just like Mikhail Tal, like Siddhant says. He used to use a lot of intuition, but intuition should not be like, okay, king f6 and yeah, okay. Then if you play bishop g5, king g7, the king is escaping. Knight g5, like, you should see to the point where at least, like, okay, I don't think he'll really escape here. Now, if he somehow gets lucky and escapes, that's a different story altogether. But after this, white is definitely winning. Black played this, and if rook f8, and white was having what move? I think knight. I think knight e6 also is good because the king is completely exposed. But is there something better I'm missing out here? Queen e6, f4, queen. Or maybe I'm missing out something better. But black played king g5 here. I'm not sure. Knight e6 anyways is good enough, so we can, like, I think it's good enough. But I don't know if there is a mate I'm missing out on. Think there could be one with this rook d5. If the king goes here, we have queen h3 and then rook d7, which wins the queen back. But I'm missing out something. Maybe I'll have to see. Queen e3. Oh, no, queen e3 is getting queen in between, guys. That will not be good. So something else. Maybe it could be also as something as simple as f4, which is also quite strong. But this is where intuition can sometimes even go wrong for us. But let's see. He played king g5 on the board, and then f4, king f5, and then bishop d6. Here we can safely assume that the king is most likely going to get mated. 1 minute. Let me just show you what happens. Queen e6, king g5, f4 check. Okay, this is the variation. I have the variation actually. I forgot to see the notation. King h6, rook d7, and queen d7. And white is winning here because he's also winning this piece back. Like the idea is if the queen moves, then we have queen h3, which is a mate. And yeah, this is winning. Actually, I forgot that I had the variation. So rook into f8, he played king g5, and it's safe to say after bishop d6, like queen d5, somewhere the tactics are going to win. We are like this kind of things we'll be looking at later stages, maybe 4 5 days in. We'll be looking at such patterns, and so I think most of the pawn structures we have got acquainted. Tomorrow we'll start looking at different positions and how to play again effective like piece deployment. Sorry, like how do you place your pieces in the correct squares or so. Yeah, planning and exactly candidate moves planning. This is what we will start with tomorrow, and I will see how to get it in. So I think that is it for today, guys. Once again, thanks a lot for joining and supporting us. If you haven't already, then do hit the like button and subscribe. I will be stopping right here, but I will definitely meet tomorrow. Uh, we will just decide on the time. Most likely it will be at the same time, guys, but it could be half an hour here and there, could be half an hour more, like could start at 7:30 maybe tomorrow, 7:30. So 7:30, 8 o'clock, I'm not, we will put the link out much beforehand though, so do hit the bell icon, and so you'll get notification just tomorrow, guys, Sunday. So we might have something else to cover, but we will try to get it at the same time if it's possible. So thanks a lot for tuning in, and I will see you tomorrow again.